On today's episode of State of the Rockets, we're going to be talking about Kevin Porter Jr.'s new extension to keep him in Houston, potentially. We're going to talk about Alperen Sengun possibly coming off the bench, and we're going to discuss the preseason and how we think that may relate and reflect and translate into the regular season. So, welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the premier Houston Rockets podcast. It is none other than State of the Rockets. I am your host, Roosh Williams, the Mastodon, coming back to you folks after a 3-month layoff. Listen, you can find me on Twitter at Roosh Williams. You can find me hosting podcasts for Ball is Life called The Noble and Roosh Show. And you can also find me in the Rockets Watch room. We'll tell you more about that. And as always, joining me is my amazing co-host, Mr. Jackson Gatlin. Jackson, what's the deal, baby?
Am I allowed to, Roosh? I do so many podcasts now. Am I allowed to introduce myself as the pod god if you're introducing yourself as the Mastodon? I think I will. So absolutely. Jackson, the pod god, Gatlin, you can find me on Twitter at JT Gatlin. Of course, I host Locked on Rockets, the only daily podcast covering your Houston Rockets. And we're going even more than daily sometimes. I've done 6 or 7 podcasts in the last couple of weeks occasionally, so you can find me there. You can also find me hosting the newest, coolest way to interact with other Rockets fans online, the Rockets Watch rooms and spaces, the best way to watch live Houston Rockets basketball, as well as how to catch up and interact with other fans. Basically, Spaces 2.0, and of course, right here on this podcast, State of the Rockets, the premier Houston Rockets podcast.
Woo! So listen, It's good to be back. We took a minute off. We wanted to make sure that we were not just coming back to, hocus pocus, boogie and baloney, with nothing actually happening. Wanted to wait for some action. Preseason happened. Kevin Porter Jr. extension happened. Regular season is about to happen in a couple days or in a day, depending on when you watch this. So it's only appropriate that we come back. Before we dive in, I just want to touch on that. Look, if you have any interest in watching Rockets games live, or just having like live discussions when news breaks, like Kevin Porter Jr.'s extension, or even maybe rewatching old games, whatever it is, there's something called Rockets Watch. Go to Twitter, go to Rockets Watch. Even if you don't have a Twitter, click the link in the bio of the Rockets Watch account and just check it out. Whenever basically Jackson, myself, and Clutch fans, if you guys know Clutch fans, we host live streams where we're watching Rockets games. We're on stage talking about it. You can listen to us. You can listen to the broadcast from the actual team if you prefer that. And we love them, so please do that if you want. And you can simultaneously chat in a chat box, like with other, like live stream with other Rockets fans and come on stage, talk to us, whatever. It's like the most fun way to take in the Rockets. So definitely check that out. But we got a lot to talk about. Do we not?
We do. On today's show, we're going to cover Kevin Porter Jr., his contract extension, how incredibly team-friendly the terms are for the Houston Rockets. We're going to break that down. First and foremost, which is just an age-old saying that we love using on this very podcast. Then we're also going to talk about Alperen Sengun and the whole latest debate amongst Rockets fans. Jonathan Fagan's article about maybe bringing Alperen Sengun off the bench. What's the best thing to maximize his skill set, his abilities moving forward? What's the best thing for the Rockets overall, right? For Jalen, for KPJ, for the rest of the starters. We're going to talk about that. Also, we're going to kind of reflect a little bit on Rockets preseason. We've got 4 preseason games to draw kind of, some ideas for what this Rockets team is going to be moving forward, what they could potentially achieve this season. And hey, the season is right around the corner, so expectations for this year for this Rockets team. Roosh, let's start with the KPJ contract, because again, we woke up to this insane news and I was shocked because I basically had it painted. I was like, the safe play is don't extend him, let him walk to restricted free agency next summer. That's the right move. That's the smart move. But I don't think anybody, you, me, Ben Dubose, anybody could have predicted the fact that they were going to come out with non-guaranteed years threaded into this contract for Kevin Porter Jr.
Well, it's a really unique structure. I don't recall seeing a deal quite like this. So credit to the Rockets front office and credit to obviously Eli Whitus and Rafael Stone, understudies of Daryl Morey. So when it comes, they may operate differently, the Rockets front office these days, but just in terms of the creativity of the deal structure, you kind of see some of that. So that's pretty cool. Look, 4 years, 82.5 million?
Yes, sir.
4 years, 82.5 million, only 15.86 million of that is guaranteed. If I'm mistaken, please correct me, but only 15.86 million of that is guaranteed. Yeah. And
Ringing endorsement.
And all of that is guaranteed within the first year of the contract. So basically, the Rockets have KPJ this year, then the extension kicks in the following season, 2023-24, and he gets that guaranteed money for the first year. And then on June 30th, 2024, the Rockets have the option basically to either waive him and then they owe him nothing, or they can guarantee the following 2 years of his contract. And I think even when they do that, it's still partially guaranteed. I'm not 100% sure on that. So the years 2 and 3 potentially could be partially or fully guaranteed. Again, if I'm wrong, please correct me. And then there's another trigger date in 2025, June 30th, 2025, to guarantee the final year of his contract. Now, look, I think it's best to think of this like a 1 year, basically a 1 year, $16 million deal, right? Because the Rockets are going to get 18 months, almost 2 seasons, almost 2 years to look at KPJ, right? So they're going to get this following season, then they're going to get the season after that. So at that point, he will have had 3 seasons under his belt with Jalen Green, 2 seasons under his belt with Jabari Smith, and 4 seasons under his belt, 3.5 seasons under his belt with Eric Gordon, all of whom at this juncture are centerpieces for the Rockets. And at that point, 3 years under his belt with Alperen Sengun. So core pieces, right? At that point, the Rockets are going to have a much better idea of what they're dealing with, where KPJ is in terms of both mental and emotional maturity, and just in terms of how he plays on the court, whether the numbers he's been putting up lately and at the end of last season were not fluky, but, are they going to consistently be like that? Where's he going to be? So they basically get 2 seasons to examine all of that and look at all of that before they have to make a decision on if they want to commit big money to him. And in the meantime, they have the cap space to do that. It also allows them the ability to, they're still going to have, I think, max cap space, at least 1 slot available. Or they could kick the can on the free agency. They waive KPJ after that first year if things go south for some reason or whatever. And then for 2023 to 24, no, for 2024 to 25, they have all that max cap space still, right? And they can still do whatever they want with it. So I think it's a genius move. I think it's incredible. Not a genius. It's a genius move,
It's an A+ move. Like, I don't know. It's a home run move. It's an A+ move, whatever you want to categorize it as.
They
the Rockets
the KPJ extension. That's the way to put it.
They made off like bandits with this deal. It was because, again, they had all the negotiating leverage in this situation, right? Because, again, the smart play was, hey, KPJ, all right, we like you. We're bought in on you being a part of this team moving forward. But the smart play for any rookie extension level deal that isn't like, again, a Luka or a Zion, or even recently you saw Jordan Poole, get his deal, but he was playing for a championship caliber team, right? They just came off a title run, so his situation is just entirely different than Kevin Porter Jr.'s. So for a lot of rookies, you let them hit the free agency market, right? You let them test the waters of restricted free agency, and if the market is out there, then you match the deal. And the Rockets don't even have to entertain that now. They've got him on a relatively team-friendly deal. All this club control for all these years moving forward. And we were kind of looking at this next season as, okay, you've got 1 year to figure out if you have something there with KPJ, right? This is the make or break year for KPJ. Now you get 2 of those. You get 2 back-to-back seasons on, again, a really team-friendly deal of seeing, okay, how can KPJ continue to grow and play, alongside and with Jalen Green? Is he the future backcourt running mate for Jalen Green? How does he elevate the floor of everybody else around him, right? How does he bring up the other guys? And through the Rockets' first 4 preseason games, KPJ's looked really solid, right? There's an understanding as to why this organization probably came up with the contract structure that they did, because they do view him as valuable, and they are internally very optimistic about what he brings to the table and how good he can really be. But at the same time, it's still the pragmatic approach. Did I use that word right?
Yes.
There we go. See, I know how words work. It's still the pragmatic approach.
What are you trying to say that it means?
To take it safely, right? To like...
Pragmatic means you're practical, realistic.
There we go. That's the realistic, practical approach. You know what? I shouldn't have tried to use a word outside of my lexicon, damn it.
I mean, you can say the word, but the way you meant it.
This always happens. You know what? I'm just going to...
Look, let me save you. It is pragmatic. It is because basically the Rockets are taking all the upside early, right? Because the fear, look, this is the fear, right? On one hand, you have the people that are saying, hey, Kevin Porter Jr. is totally worth it. You got to lock this kid up. Look at the numbers. Look at the cap is going to spike. And when it spikes, 15 million is going to be nothing. You got to lock him up while you can. 4 years, 60 million, something like that. A lot of people were saying that this summer. On the other hand of that, a lot of people were saying, oh my God, no, he's a restricted free agent. Let him go to restricted free agency, play it safe. If someone wants to offer him a fat sheet, we can match it. The risk of that, of course, being that he balls out all season and he puts all the off-court issues behind him, and another team's like, let's do it, and then the Rockets are in a tough spot and they're negotiating against that team without having the leverage. Doing this, they have all of the leverage. I will say it's funny because when you see Woj tweet this, right, the people that were talking about, oh, you got to extend KPJ, they took their victory lap like, oh my God. And the people that didn't want KPJ, they're sitting there thinking, oh my God, what have the Rockets done? Like, this is catastrophic. I saw both sides this morning when the tweet went out, and then you get the details and you realize it's a win-win, right? KPJ gets his money and he has an opportunity to secure more money, right? It's pretty much on him to play well and earn that and meet whatever the incentives are. And then the other side also wins because it's like, oh, the Rockets have all the optionality. So he's either gonna pan out and they're gonna look like geniuses, or he's not gonna pan out and they're gonna be able to get out of the situation scot-free. So it's a win-win. I mean, it's a good day in Houston. It gives us some clarity moving forward. We can stop wondering and worrying about, is KPJ going to be here? We know he's here for at least 2 more seasons. And he's looked really good at the end of last season. He looked really good in the preseason. His shooting it's looked very real and reliable. It's one of the weaknesses of his game. And he was able to, so far, it looks like he can really shoot. So I'm excited, hopefully we can, as a fan base, we can put this behind us and just get to basketball.
They locked him up without actually committing the money to locking him up, which is the crazy part. Because now, again, you have him under team control for 4 years without actually committing that money to him somehow. And again, that's an incredible amount of leverage by Rafael Stone. And I think it kind of tells you something about how KPJ and maybe his inner circle, his agent, whatever, was looking at the market and just figured, hey, this is the one team that makes a lot of sense that's actually going to, commit something to you where you have a chance to earn that top dollar, right? The ball is currently in KPJ's court for earning that the entirety of the 82.5 million. He can very much achieve that. Whereas had he gone to restricted free agency, he's basically able to bet on himself with the Rockets rather than betting on himself on the open free agency market, which again is an incredible deal, an incredible contract structure. And you got to give a ton of credit to the Rockets front office for engineering that in what I think is kind of the first time that we've ever seen a contract like this be put into place as part of a rookie extension for a player in KPJ's situation. But one of the things about, the things as far as what stood out from KPJ's play in the preseason that you mentioned there a minute ago, right? His ability to shoot, right? His ability to kind of play off ball a little bit more, and just his overall success at the end of last season, the start of this season, has to do with the hierarchy, right? There's a very clearly defined hierarchy for this Rockets team now that was non-existent last year, or it existed, but for those final 7 games where we really got to see Jalen and KPJ unleashed. And it very much feels like that's a continuation into this preseason and hopefully into the season, where Jalen is the number 1 option, KPJ's, number 2, maybe number 1 on certain nights if he's really cooking, whatever. Those are your 2 guys. Those are the 2 guys that you're playing through the majority of the game, and you're running all your offense through them. And that is what is currently being presented to Rockets fans as this big issue, because how do you get those 2 guys to happily coexist with Alperen Sengun on the basketball floor, who also needs the basketball in his hands to be at his most effective on the floor? And now we're kind of dealing with this debate where, hey, should LP come off the bench or not, right? If the Rockets are hell-bent on running the majority of their offense through Jalen and KPJ, then you're not getting the most out of Alperen Sengun if he's out there with them and if he's just being used as a screen and roll big, because those aren't his strengths right now. So I see both sides of the argument. I think in a wonderful, vacuum sealed, hypothetical 2K scenario, you could throw LP out there and have Jalen and KPJ playing off of him, and he's the central hub offensively and all that. They might not want that. The Rockets may not want that. The coaching staff may not want that. They might want to really see what they have in Jalen and KPJ offensively and what the ceiling of a Jalen and KPJ-led offense looks like, rather than deferring to the guy who is 3rd or maybe even arguably 4th in the Rockets pecking order, depending on where you put Jabari Smith Jr. in that hierarchy, and trying to run offense through him, which is kind of this big debate. Do you start him? Do you sit him? Do you let him run the second unit? And I see merit to both sides of the argument, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, look, one thing I did want to say about KPJ's extension is 16 to 20 million when the cap spikes. If his production continues at the rate that it has been, 16 to 20 million when the cap spikes, I think about 12 million or so is going to be that's a bargain. Like Eric Gordon's getting like 19 million right now, right? We could go down the list of players that are getting somewhere in that neighborhood of money. And that's on this cap. It's not on the, if you prorate that for the new cap, like that could be potentially a steal. It could potentially be Rafael Stone's coup de grace. Stop it. Could be Rafael Stone's coup de grace.
Marty and or Coop agree with the coup de grace take. That's all.
Sorry. So, but last thing I was going to say is you got to give the Rockets credit because they traded for him. When no one else would, they totally rehabilitated his value so far. They're starting to get a productive basketball player. We're starting to see Kevin Porter Jr. grow before our eyes. And so if that process completes itself and it really turns out, pans out in an ideal scenario for the Rockets, then you're going to have to give them a ton of credit, from the front office to the coaching staff to John Lucas for really playing an instrumental role in developing all that. So just wanted to point that out there. Long way to go. We'll see. Now,
it is worth noting. I will, sorry, because, I jumped the gun on trying to segue into the Sengun conversation. That's on me. I apologize. I'm a little rusty. We're getting back into the groove of State of the Rockets, all that good stuff.
Anything. I just wanted to redirect.
But it is worth noting that the sentiment right around KPJ organizationally, at Rockets practice, when we got a chance to talk to him about what the extension means, all that stuff, he constantly reiterates, Houston is home, right? Houston is home to him. He loves this city. He loves the fans. He loves how this city has embraced him. It really does feel like a fresh start in his life. And I don't think anybody was more proud of the accomplishment of KPJ getting this contract and what it means for him personally moving forward than Stephen Silas, who had a really touching moment when asked about what this contract means, because Silas has a really deep emotional connection with KPJ, right? And, that's obviously we want to, give John Lucas's flowers for being an instrumental part in KPJ's development, absolutely deservedly so. But Silas has been the head coach for this guy, right? And he came to Houston. He had his problems in the past, and Silas saw this really talented young man who everybody praised and said he is just the nicest, most genuine person when you get a chance to meet him, the way he interacts with staff, arena workers, all that. He's just a really good guy. And having Silas have that connection with him and be able to grow and deal with, the growth of him being a player, possible franchise cornerstone type guy, Silas trying to find his way as a head coach. Silas has talked constantly about how KPJ has helped him grow as an individual, as a person, and as an NBA head coach. So to see him have a moment where he was at a loss for words when asked about what this moment meant to see for KPJ as the guy who has been an instrumental part of the organization that, quote unquote, saved his life. Remember his media day quote from a couple seasons ago. I
asked Silas about it today and he cried.
Yeah, it was a really emotional moment, and you could feel just how honest that moment was and how raw he was being about, again, how much he genuinely loves and cares for Kevin Porter Jr. And that connection that Silas is able to establish with players does go a long way, I think, in the grand scheme of things. And the ability to kind of him, that coach has got my back. There's buy-in. Guys play hard. They fight hard for him, that kind of thing. So that kind of blends into the culture and some of the stuff that I think we're going to hopefully start seeing Silas establish this year after a couple of years of rough sledding, given all the other things that he's had to deal with during his Rockets tenure to this point.
Yeah, and then I also think an underrated point to add is Christian Wood's departure. I think really KPJ will really benefit from it. I think personally, just my opinion. But on the court, basketball wise, I think you immediately see how much better Kevin Porter Jr. has played now that they can actually legitimately spread things out, and now that there's not a ball stopper on offense, and now that they're running screen and rolls downhill with Bruno Fernando, and KPJ looks great running the screen and roll, which is probably the most encouraging thing I've seen all preseason. Because if he can develop that and be elite at that, which I think he can just in terms of the skill that he possesses, but if he actually does it on the court, that's how you put building blocks in place for a potential superstar player, right? Someone that can run the screen and roll, kill you on it, whether it's him scoring, whether it's a lob over the top or a step back, someone that can ISO and shoot, catch and shoot. fine cutters like that. That's where it becomes real, and you have something dependable, and it's not just this elite ISO player. It's like, oh, this guy can get you
true hooper, fast twitch.
fast twitch, step back, butter, silk. No,
we need Ball Don't Stop on this podcast. You've got to hook us up with that. That would be the greatest episode ever.
I actually probably could make that happen if you want. We could bring him on. He would probably love to come on and talk about Jalen Green and KPJ. If you want me to, we could talk about that. Anyway, but from a basketball perspective, I think he's really benefiting or going to benefit. We've seen it in the last however many games of the season. Last year, we saw it in preseason, whatever. So it really, I think this season with the extension being under his belt now, right, he can feel good about that. And also mentally, like when you've had issues in the past and people don't trust you or you feel misunderstood or whatever, like I can personally speak from experience. I'm sure a lot of other people can. Sometimes when you think you're on the right path and you've been doing the right things and you're not getting credit for it, it disincentivizes you. It makes you say, oh, you know what? They're still judging me with the same label that they used to judge me with, even though I feel like I have changed and righted my wrongs. And I think that's unfair. So if that's how you want to treat me, okay, whatever. I'm just going to go back to being that guy because y'all don't seem to care either way, right? That happens. So I think mentally to get the extension really meant like it gives him peace of mind. I think it gives him confidence so he can just get to the basketball. On the court, I think Christian Wood being gone opens things up. Jabari Smith, I think, helps. Jalen Green getting older helps. And then he's just on his own. He's shown he's the sense that I've gotten when I, have asked around is that KPJ has done everything the organization has asked him to do, especially over the last 4 or 5 months, right? Season ends, whatever they wanted him to do this offseason, he has done his job. And that's the sense that I've gotten. So seems like both parties are really happy. I'm excited to see the kid grow and play. I was inconsistent and I was like not sold at a certain time. And I'm still not 100% sold that like he's, the next James Harden or something like that. But I do think that there's a real path for him to take that next step emotionally and mentally and in terms of maturity. I think he's trending upwards in that direction. And then same in terms of his actual hooping. I think he's trending up as well. So I'm really excited. So with that.
The trend is incredibly promising with KPJ for sure. And that point you brought up about trust is, I think, a big one. I think there's a lot of trust inherently between KPJ and the organization, and that's going to pay dividends further down the line.
So on the vocab tip, though, do you know what inherently means?
Apparently I don't. Don't call me out on it.
Okay.
We're trucking through. I don't want to hear it. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to break out an SAT vocab book. I'm going to order one off Amazon, and I'm going to atone for all my vocab sins, because apparently I'm just letting words fly left and right that I think they mean something, and clearly they mean the opposite. So it's a good thing I don't talk for a living. God.
Sorry, I don't want to be that guy correcting you, but since I'm your partner, I feel like
it's a running joke at this point, so we might as well. We're just going to turn it into a segment where you quiz me on vocab words or something. No, I digress. I used that word right. I know what that one means. Yeah, let's talk about the center battle.
Okay, so Sengun, so you teed it up. So do you want to continue or do you want me to respond?
You can respond. I mean, I teed it up like an hour ago, but yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Look, basically, here's the deal. I want Alperen Sengun to start. Just because I want to see him play. And I do think that he needs to learn how to play with the talent we have. However, and I was initially kind of upset when I saw that Fagan article. I was like, I don't really get this. However, the sense that I get is that pretty much what you said, right? You got two guys in the backcourt, Jalen Green and KPJ, who are really awesome with the ball in their hands. And we've seen them both be able to create for themselves, score, create for others at elite levels. And that's something to be excited for. The offense at the end of last season, the offense in the preseason was a lot of fun, right? And then you add Jabari Smith to that mix, who we've only seen for one game, but the options that he creates for you, also a ton of fun. And then we've seen Bruno Fernando. And I talked earlier about Kevin Porter Jr. running the pick and roll, and Bruno Fernando's made that possible because Bruno Fernando has the athleticism to catch the lob over the top, and KPJ can get it to him, bounce pass in the pocket, get it between the seams, whatever it is, KPJ can do that. So I'm okay with it, right? Like I said, I can see a scenario where Bruno's starting both halves, not finishing both halves, or starting both halves and then doesn't come back in until a while, right? They get Sengun some run. I feel like Garuba is not – I think Garuba's going to get some playing time. I don't know if it'll be a lot, but he will get some, I think. So I think it works. And then you let Alp run the second unit with the offense. He's the hub. Now you can feed him. He can get the ball, post up, high screen and roll, whatever it is. But like basically Alp's most effective with the ball. We all know that, right? Because he's not a threat shooting the ball. He's really good with the ball. He can post you up and score. I think he was top 5 in the league in like points per post up or something like that among like the elites with Jokic and whoever else. And then he's also effective when he calls for the ball. He'll clap for the ball at the top of the key, get the ball, and then wait for cutters, find you, right? So if you do that with Jalen and KPJ, you're taking the ball out of their hands. So I can see this, this kind of chemistry if they aim to develop it like that from like a philosophical basketball perspective. I can see that working. So I'm cool with it, man. I mean, as long as he's getting the minutes, it doesn't matter how they come, right? I want to see him get at least like 20. I would like 27 minutes a night from Sengun. I don't know if he'll reach that, but hopefully he'll get close to that.
Yeah. To your very first point that you brought up is right. Does it ultimately matter if he's starting or if he is coming off of the bench, if he's getting actual starter level minutes, right? That's kind of my big takeaway question, whatever, about this whole dialogue is I don't think it matters. And to me, I'm really interested in the possibility of him still remaining the starter, but you kind of gauge on a game-by-game basis, right? Like, you start him out, let him play the first handful of minutes, and if Jalen and KPJ are having they've got a strong start to the night, they look good, whatever, shots are falling, awesome, cool. You ride that wave, you sub in Bruno early into the game, he's the first sub off the bench, and you let Sengun come back into the game later when KPJ and Jalen both check out to then run the second unit. And you capitalize on a game where Jalen and KPJ look really good. But you have to be able to make that like line change, that coaching decision in the moment, in the heat of battle, whatever. Rather than just start Bruno just because we want to get a better look at Jalen and Sengun with a vertical lob threat, a guy who can, rim run a little bit better than Sengun, whatever. Because then you're basically hamstrung into the idea of, okay, well, Alp is only running with that second unit. And I am interested to see him get actual reps with Kevin Porter Jr., with Jalen Green, especially with how well we know KPJ can play off ball, right? He was the best catch and shoot player in the NBA last season. So I don't see how you wouldn't be enticed by the idea of allowing Jalen and KPJ to play off of Sengun. That's why I said, even earlier on paper, it makes a lot of sense. You have a guy who can be an offensive hub, who can play make, who can make life easier for those two guys. But that may just not be the way that the organization and the coaching staff kind of see it right now. They may want to test the waters with something else and really see, okay, does this type of offensive archetype with a rim running traditional big in Bruno Fernando take us to a higher ceiling than giving Sengun the rock and letting him create for Jalen and KPJ as they're playing off ball. Who knows? The good news is the Rockets have an entire season to tinker with lineups, to toy, to test things out, to try new things. And I don't know which one makes more sense to try first. It does kind of, the sense that I'm getting is like they might try it sooner rather than later with Bruno maybe getting the, potential starting nod in the lineup, which is, I get that that's frustrating, right? There's an entire country that's pulling for Alperen Sengun and thinks he's a future star. Is it the right or wrong move? We're not going to be able to tell for a long time. But in the moment, Rockets are going to get a lot of grief, seeing as how Alpi looked sensational at points last year, and now seemingly over the course of a 2 to 3 month summer, they've basically gone, well, about that, right? About him being the starter, about him, getting heavy minutes, whatever. They seem to be cooling on him maybe a little bit, or just maybe the expectations have changed. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because in the last preseason game against Indiana, he played 25 minutes. He was 4 of 9 from the field, 2 of 2 from 3, which that's not going to happen too often.
Yeah, that one's an anomaly.
2 of 2 from the line, 12 points, 4 boards, 2 blocks of steal, and 5 assists. So I'd have to go back and rewatch it. I don't know how much he ran with the second unit and how many of those assists came with the second unit, but theoretically, I can see a stat line like that, right, where you run him more with the second unit, and as a result of that, he's like playmaking a lot. 5 assists, 6 assists. Obviously, if you're putting up 12, 5, and 4 with 2 blocks and a steal in 25 minutes, like logic would tell you, if you play 32 minutes, you're probably going to put up like 16, 17, 8, and 9, 5, 6, 7 assists.
It goes back to the argument from last year, right? Where you looked at his per 36 numbers and you're like, oh my God, this guy's a star. Like, why is he not starting?
Right. Yes, basically. So at some point, they're going to have to find a way to optimize his talent with Jalen's talent, with Kevin's talent, with Jabari's talent. And they're all guys that, except for Jabari, they're all guys that need the ball in their hand. So you got 3 guys like that. That's tough. And then you had Eric Gordon. I mean, Eric Gordon's effective with the ball in his hand, or he's going to be a spot-up shooter. You know, those are the 2 methods in which he's effective. He doesn't move off the ball. Jabari will move off the ball. But the point is, a lot of ball to go around. How do you get the most out of this? You might have like too much talent. So we'll see what they do with it. Like I said, I was upset at first, but I'm going to try to be patient. We saw how much development happened last season and is leading into this season. So, same thing with this season, right? They still don't have to be good. I think that they would be happy if they were good, but they're not going to be tripping if they're not good. They just want to see progress. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. And look, we'll see how big of a leap Kevin and Jalen took. I mean, I don't know yet, but they look so far. It looks like when they play without Christian Wood, they drop 20 a game.
Jalen looks unguardable right now. I'm just going to go ahead and put that out there.
That's, to be fair, and I love Jalen, but to be fair, that's when the shot's falling, he's unguardable. When he's on one of those off nights, but are we going into, does that wrap up Sengun? And then we're in the last segment talking about
the last point that I wanted to share on the Sengun side of things is not only does him either coming off the bench exclusively or potentially starting a game and subbing out early and then still, effectively running the bench unit, right? I think it also serves the purpose of the Rockets really don't have a great backup option at the 1, right? Like there's question marks about Daishen Nix. There's question marks about Ty Washington being ready at this point. You maybe can rely on I kind of see it as like if they're bringing Sengun off the bench or if he's running primarily with the bench unit, you can kind of play make by committee with him and Jae'Sean Tate a little bit and not have to rely exclusively on all right, Daishen, here's the ball. You're the only guy who can create on the floor for our guys, because there were moments throughout the Rockets preseason where they only had one of Daishen or Ty on the floor and no other secondary creators, and the offense just it looked bad. Because look,
having Daishen and LP together is going to be tough because Daishen's not a spot up threat and he's also not a cutter.
And so that's another problem, right? So there are some problems across the board here, but Josh is not a creator. He's not a point guard at all. He's a bucket getter. Again, we've made the joke before on Rockets Watch and in other podcasts that I call him a combo wing because he doesn't have any one in his game. So he's not a combo guard. He's a combo wing. So I'm just at this point where Alp could really help elevate that second unit for the Rockets and other guys that are going to be on that second unit, right? KJ Martin, Tari Eason, guys who have the athleticism and can play without the ball and be the cutters and buy into this identity of how you're supposed to play to maximize Alp when he has the basketball, rather than trying to bend Jalen and KPJ to that mold and taking the ball out of their hands when they're so good with it. So they could be good without the basketball, right? We know Jalen can play off ball. We know KPJ is a fantastic catch and shoot player. Maybe that is the final evolution of this team further down the line after Alp gets those bench reps potentially, or he gets, more established, more comfortable in his role as an NBA player. Maybe that's what this team could look like further down the line. But right now, I think they want to identify what the strengths and weaknesses are for Jalen and KPJ and the way that they can run the primary unit, and then identify and maximize the strengths that Alp brings to the table in a second unit without sacrificing those reps for the backcourt.
Yeah, last thing I'll say about Sengun is there is a world where the final form of this iteration of the Rockets is some beautiful, heavenly, melodic blend of Jalen and KPJ's ability on the ball, both for themselves and both creating for others, and them using their athleticism to revolve around Alp and cut, and just that's when it becomes unstoppable. When you can ball don't stop, tween hezzy boom boom your way to buckets. When you can do that and create for others and run a pick and roll downhill and throw lobs and find shooters, and then when you have baby Jokic able to go for stretches of the game, posting up or running from the high post and cutting, and Jalen's an elite athlete and Kevin's a really good athlete, that's when you're unguardable as a team. And we haven't even talked about Jabari spotting up and, crashing to the basket, operating from the elbow, triple threat, rising and shooting. If he hones his ability to drive at some point, there is a final form of this team that is playing crazy basketball. Now, do they get there? that Kanye meme.
Yeah.
We'll never know. We may never know. I don't know,
but this could be that the ideal avenue to potentially get there, right? Because again,
right.
if you make that argument, right, you put them, and that's the takeaway, right? Is like, again, the Rockets aren't necessarily. I get this sentiment that the Rockets are, oh my God, they're out on Sengun. They don't believe in him anymore. No, the idea is they're trying to maximize everybody, right? They're trying to see what they have across the board in the one final year that they have where the wins don't matter. So they can mess around. They can do certain things. And this could be the best avenue to get those guys the reps they need to then be even closer to that final form further down the line.
Totally agree. And with that, let's talk about the actual basketball, man. Preseason, it was fun. I thought preseason was really fun. I thought they played really well. I thought there were stretches where they played poorly, obviously, because, you had the third stringers in, or just weird rotations or combinations or whatever.
When the key guys were out there, though, they looked good.
They looked really good.
Looked really good.
They looked really good. And we only saw Jabari for one game. Now, granted, they played the Spurs, and the Spurs sat a couple of their guys, or they just weren't available for whatever reason. They played Miami, and Miami sat Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry and Bam, obviously. They played Indiana, and Indiana sat Tyrese Halliburton.
Toronto didn't sit anybody except maybe OG, I think.
No, Toronto played OG, I think. Let me double check. I think they played OG. They sat Van Vliet.
That was their key. I knew they were missing one key piece. I was trying to remember off rip who it was. Yeah. I think it was Van Vliet. We'll just go with that.
No, hopefully it definitely was Van Vliet. I'm just trying to see. No, OG played 23 minutes. So
there it is.
And if you watch I think let's talk about the Toronto game, right? I think the Toronto game was, the best sample that we saw because they were playing against a good team, a playoff team that was missing Van Vliet, albeit you could say he's their best player. He is one of their best players. But regardless, they were missing him, and the Rockets were missing Jabari Smith. So, whatever, right?
And Alperen Sengun due to dental work.
That's right, and Alperen Sengun. Good point. So they were starting and Eric Gordon. They missed Eric Gordon as well. So the Rockets were missing three key players. But the Rockets starters outplayed the Raptors starters. The Rockets rotation players outplayed the Raptors, and they held on to the lead and didn't end up losing it. But I mean, we saw Kevin Porter Jr. had he was 4 of 10, 15 of 5, started slow, then picked it up. Jalen Green, 23 points on 16 shots, 7 of 16. Like, not incredible eye-popping numbers, but they just played good basketball. KJ Martin, 13 points, 5 boards, 3 dimes, 2 of 4 from 3. Jayshawn Tate, I think that's the game he got hurt, right? But he had 7 points, 5 boards, 2 assists. He hit the only 3 he took. Like, they looked like a team that finally embodied the identity of, hey, Steven Silas is an offensive genius, right? Like, they look like a team that is offensively potent and versatile. Some of that is bailout isolation play, so that's fair. That's a fair criticism, right? It's one of those things that's a criticism and it's a compliment. It's kind of like, yeah, they got bailed out by like badass players, so you can't necessarily rely on that for 82 games. But Kevin Porter Jr. was hitting tough shots. Jalen Green was hitting tough shots, and that's what those guys do. You add Jabari Smith in there. Tari Eason, good Lord. Let me see his numbers. I forget. I'm pretty sure he probably
from the Raptors game. It was 24 points on 8 of 15 shooting, 8 boards, 1 assist, 2 steals, shot 2 of 4 from 3, and 6 of 6 at the charity stripe. I mean, ridiculous. Tari looked like a monster through preseason. And my one silver lining takeaway from Jabari not being available throughout the preseason for the final 3 games was that, man, Tari got some serious run because other guys missed out. And again, namely Jabari, because he would have been a guy getting 20, 25, 30 minutes on any given one of those nights. And we probably would have gotten a much smaller sample size of what Tari Eason could actually do on the floor. And he's just a guy that goes out there. You don't have to run plays for him. And he just makes stuff happen on both sides, offense and defense, and has this motor that is nonstop running 24/7. The guy does not stop hustling.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. I love him. I'm so excited to watch him, and I'm confident that he's going to play. So the Raptors game, for example, right? They went up 9 at half. Competitive game. Both teams were actually playing their guys until I think probably the fourth quarter, early fourth quarter. Rockets were up 9 at half. They come out now in the third quarter against a good team. I think we would expect the Rockets to come out and shit the bed in the third quarter, right? They came out and they outscored Toronto by 4, and they held them to 23 points. So after scoring 56 in the first half, Toronto did 28 per quarter. They held them to 23 points, and that's the kind of thing where it's like, whoa, I don't want to read too much into a preseason game. And we've already qualified this by talking about Fred VanVleet being out and Gordon and Jabari and Sengun also being out. But That's pretty impressive. Like the Raptors try. Nick Nurse is definitely not sleepwalking.
Yo, Nick Nurse was full court pressing, all right? Nick Nurse was trying in this game. This was not like a preseason dress rehearsal where they weren't, again, they were missing Van Vliet. Sure, you make the argument the Rockets were missing 3 starters in Sengun, Jabari, and EG. Well, two possible starters and one guy who's going to get starters minutes. There we go. Sure, whatever way you want to dress it up. The Raptors were trying in this game, and the Rockets looked like the better team.
Yeah, they did. So that was encouraging to me from like an identity effort perspective. It's one of those things where it's like, now we're going to see who they are, and we're going to find out. We're going to see if they do that regularly or if that was just an isolated preseason thing. We don't know. But those are the types of things that if they do that consistently, you mark that, you put a flag on it, you highlight it, and you're like, okay, that's improvement. That is tangible. That's a tangible jump that this is that they are taking as a team. So that's exciting. You touched on Tari. I mean, like you said, you don't have to call action for him. You don't have to do anything for him. He just has a nose for the ball. He's an incredible offensive rebounder. He has an incredible instinct for where the ball, like Rodman-esque. I think John Lucas made that comparison. He just knows where the ball is bouncing. Like bing, bing, bing. It doesn't matter. He's there. And then also, man, Jabari Smith. We haven't talked about Jabari Smith enough, right? So we only saw him for one game, but he was the truth. I mean, he was pulling threes. He was pulling up in transition. He was catching and shooting. He was cutting and going to the basket after a miss and getting easy buckets. Defensively, we saw his impact. And size-wise, like you feel confident because you look out there and it's like, yo, there's a legitimate 6'11" guy that plays like it, which is the caveat because they had a 6'10", 6'11" guy who didn't play like it. But there's a 6'11" guy who plays like it, who protects the rim like it, who defends like it, and he can move like he's like 6'6", or 6'8", or whatever. So it's like, whoa. And we only saw that for one quarter. So you add all of that together, and then you look at, hopefully incremental improvement. Guys like Garuba should get a chance, and I think we saw him in the preseason pretty much doing what Garuba does, keeping offensive rebounds alive, causing turnovers, blocking shots, stealing it, kind of doing that awesome little trot he does in transition, getting putbacks, so we'll see guys take those types of leaps. And man, I don't want to get too excited. I don't want to overreact from the preseason. I've said that a million times. And the NBA is very good. The West is very good. The East is also very good. So it's like, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, right? But the Rockets look like they should win a few more games this season.
Yeah, I basically also Garuba does that little jog because of his lanyard, just as a heads up. No, but no. So little inside joke there for our hopeful returning State of the Watch. We're gonna publish this and get like 10 views on YouTube because we haven't published a video in 3 months. I kid. No, the entire team, like the physicality of some of the guys at the forward spot, the big spots for this Rockets team, Bruno, Tari. KJ, I think is maybe the guy who, look, I was super impressed with Jalen. Basically, every single game that he played legitimate minutes, so outside of that Spurs one, he was basically scoring like a point per minute before like garbage time kind of hit.
That's been my tagline. You just stole my tagline.
Was that your tag? I'm so sorry. Like, was that your tagline? My bad. You take it.
I've been saying that all preseason because if you look at it, it's true. It's like 23 and 25, 25 and 28,
all right.
33 and 30, whatever it is. So.
Credit the Mastodon. So point per minute for JG. He's been fantastic, right? He's looking like a future scoring champ for the NBA, right? Scoring with ease, scoring at all 3 levels, and the number one thing, right? Getting to the free throw line and converting those at above a 95% clip. I think he shot 95.5% in preseason from the free throw line. So if he can be a 2-guard that is flirting with like the 50-40-90 club, I don't see how that's not a perennial like all-star further down the line, and very clearly a tier 1 option on a championship team one day. But he was fantastic.
Based on my very quick math mentally in my head and my memory, because I didn't look up each box score, I think he scored 81 points in 82 minutes.
That's bananas.
Not counting the Spurs game.
That's ridiculous. He's so just uber talented, and you can just see it, right? You talked about the bailout plays, right, against the Raptors, and there were even some of those against the Heat where you're just like, yo, Jalen and KPJ are just so damn talented. They just find ways to make things happen on the floor. And you need some of that. Like you need a structure, you need an identity, you need a scheme that works to rely on, for the majority of the game. But sometimes when it gets down to it, when you need a bucket in crunch time, you just need a guy to go out there and get you a bucket, go be more talented than the other team. And Jalen can do that. KPJ can do that. And that's what they have as far as just a skill that makes them so damn good on the floor. But KJ was the other guy. Again, I started talking about KJ. Having him play the 3 for the Rockets and seeing the growth that he's, the strides that he's made with his game to where he looks more comfortable with the ball in his hands, although there was that one possession that he brought the ball up the floor in transition and he's just carrying every single dribble. But to be fair, the entire NBA does that. So, I mean, it was pretty blatantly obvious, though. But legitimately, he looks more comfortable, in the half court, attacking off closeouts, playing that 3 spot. The shot looks very real for KJ Martin. And even just his ability to drive, attack off a closeout, and then make the right read, right? Kick the ball cross court, when he's driving baseline to the corner shooter, or just making the right extra pass at the top of the key to the next guy, right next to him on the wing and gets an open 3 that way. KJ's looked really solid. And I've obviously we had the offseason stuff, the trade request, the drama with his dad not being happy about his role, all this stuff. And I was at a place where I thought, man, KJ's probably a goner. But the way that he's played throughout preseason, the way that he's played throughout training camp, the way that he is, again, everybody loves having KJ around, right? There's no bad blood between him and anybody else in the locker room. It's all good vibes. It's all looked like it's on the up and up. I mean, I think he's easily one of the best 8 or 9 players on this Rockets roster. And I definitely want to see him continue to have a role for this Rockets team, because he fits a need that they have, where you look at KJ and he's like, all right, well, when he plays the 4, he's an undersized 4. Yeah, he can jump through the gym, but he's playing out of position almost at the 4 spot. You play him at 3, 6'7", can jump out of the gym, good size, good on-ball defense, now has a more well-rounded offensive game. And again, he gets within 10 feet of the rim and he just takes off and soars through the air and yams it home. He's a perfect fit for what this Rockets team wants to do.
I agree, man. The athleticism is elite. If the 3-point shooting continues the way it has, obviously that's an incredible sign. He's starting to drive and create for others, kicking it. We've seen him be creative with that. And again, the athleticism is elite. I mean, he just gets so far above the rim on both ends of the floor that it's it is an absolute weapon. So, is
he the best athlete you've ever seen?
I don't know about ever, but I say this frequently and I mean it. His vertical, his hops, so he's got some of the craziest hops I've ever seen, for sure. Off memory, man, it's top 5 hops. It's crazy.
His bounce almost feels it doesn't. It's like he's levitating when he jumps. You see still shots, right, of somebody who gets him mid-flight, and it looks like he just got up there like a pogo stick or something, where he jumped off a trampoline and he's just up there, feet sometimes are flat in the air, and you're like, what is this photoshopped? What's going on?
Well, it's one of those things, the way it's real is because you can tell in real time. Because I can't jump, right? So I don't have a reference point for jumping. I don't have.
I'm also very grounded. Yes.
Yeah, I don't have an impressive vertical. So. But guys that you watch at that level, there are guys, there's 2 guys that I can think of, 3 guys I can think of off the top of my head. One of them is KJ. Michael Jordan, Vince Carter, KJ. Michael Jordan, I remember, you watch him jump and he would land somewhere else. He would land somewhere else and he would do several things before finishing whatever his move was. And you were like, yo, how did he do that? And because you're watching it in real time, that was abnormal. He was in the air for an amount of time that I could tell in real time wasn't normal. Because this kind of thing, it's negligible once you get to a certain level. You can't tell the difference between, I don't know, dunker X and dunker Y, because they're both pretty good dunkers. But KJ's a sliver above those guys, and you can see it in real time. Same with Vince, right? He would get so high up that you'd be like, yo, how did he get that much of his arm into the rim? Or how did he make that look so easy? He jumped from over there. That's insane. And same with KJ. You'll see him just get up and you're like, yo, he just jumped from almost the elbow of the free throw line. And he finished with, half of his forearm in the rim.
Or the block he had, I think it was against Miami, right? Where he went up vertically. Yeah. Maybe it was Pacers. No, I think it was Miami. He goes up vertically and he just hung in the air for so long.
And had enough time, hung with the guy, and then the guy was falling and shot, and KJ was boom. That's how he was just waiting, boom, block. That's, I mean, dude, it's something else. So that's special, right? He's not going to have that forever. So I hope the Rockets are able to use, get the most of him while he's at that prime. Because right now that's the biggest asset of his game. The other stuff's complementary. But that's why he's a weapon. That he has that elite attribute. So I'm totally with you, man. I mean, I could even see a world, I could even get down with the world where he's the starting 3 and you're bringing Eric Gordon off the bench. And Eric Gordon is technically your backup point guard, and Alperen Sengun, it's Gordon bringing it up, getting it to Sengun to post up or getting Sengun in the high post, something like that off the bench. I don't know. But KJ's been awesome. I mean, Tari's awesome. It's weird. There's a lot of talent on this team, and it's never supposed to work out like that, right? It very rarely works out to where you draft your core, right? People are going to say the Warriors did it, the Grizzlies did it, the Hawks, maybe you could say the Hawks. Yes, right? They drafted like a core of, players. Maybe the Grizzlies are different. I don't know who they drafted. The Grizzlies might be the exception here. But you look at the Warriors, you look at the Hawks, for example, their core was drafted. Draymond Curry, Draymond Curry, Clay drafted, right? If you can remember anyone else off the top of your head, let me know. The Hawks, John Collins.
Looney was drafted, right? Like they brought in Looney. The only guy on the Warriors that wasn't drafted that's a key part of what they're doing was Wiggins because he came via trade.
Well, I'm even talking about like the first Warriors, like the fourth.
Oh, okay, got you. Like further back, yeah. Well, like Barnes was drafted.
Barnes was drafted. That's a good point. How they started it, right? And then they eventually traded.
Jordan Poole, most recently, just got the bag. So a lot of drafting success.
So my point is, though, it's rare that you see a team draft its core and its role players like that then become a title team, right? Like the Hawks, I think they drafted Kevin Huerter, Trae Young, John Collins. Okongwu hasn't really been like that big of a,
he's still kind of fresh. So,
right,
but they traded for Capella. They traded for DeJounte Murray.
They traded Cam Reddish. They still have DeAndre Hunter, I think. So it's like some of those guys, yes, but I mean, it's weird because the Rockets, they traded for KPJ, but they drafted Jalen, they drafted Jabari. We'll see what happens. They drafted Sengun. We'll see what happens with that. They drafted Tari, they drafted KJ, and it's like these guys are, they're starting to look like, the building blocks of a real team. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be able to draft the entire core, but they have, they still have Garuba, Josh Christopher, Ty Washington. We'll see if those guys hit, but if they don't, it's okay because of the names I just mentioned. And then they have another draft pick, presumably this coming season, and Milwaukee's, which we won't even count for now, but presumably potentially another top 10 pick. And at that point, you're like, man, they could really put together a legitimate 7 of homegrown talent. Don't want to get ahead of myself.
And then if you have that legitimate 7 or maybe even 8, right, of homegrown talent, you get that one guy to take it all over the top, right? That one big splashy trade or free agency signing to really fill the biggest gap,
which they'll be able to get with max cap space and the trade assets they have. So it's like optionality has been kind of the way that I think that's, if I had to use a word to label Rafael Stone's approach or mantra, it would be optionality.
Yeah, that was the big buzzword going into his rookie GM season was they kept saying the word optionality over and over. And I think it became a bit of a meme at one point, with the Rockets front office, optionality. It's one of those NBA buzzwords you would hate. So I find it funny that you're circling back to using it now.
I do hate it. But this is the world we live in.
Positionless basketball.
Ooh, yeah. Buzzwords, metrics, VORP. Anyways, so
can you do ball don't stop, but with advanced metrics, true shooting percentage?
That's actually a good one. We should go there one day. But regardless.
No, we were going to do this. It's going to be a new segment. We won't do it today, but we're going to have a segment that we will revisit from time to time called Words Don't Stop, where we will select a category. We'll do something fun where we have you, the listener, pick a category for Roosh and I to prepare for, and we have to do Words Don't Stop following a specific category and deliver it in the cadence of Ball Don't Stop. So it'll be a ton of fun. We'll figure that out for next time.
Desserts, panna cotta, chocolate ganache, fruit tart. Anyways, so regardless, hopefully that's what we're seeing. Now, on a basketball tip, look, like I said, I'm just going to do a quick gloss of the main players and what I liked that I saw. Kevin Porter Jr., the shooting has carried over. He looked like Harden a couple times. I know people hate that comparison, but he really did. He made a defender chop and then step back and pulled the three. He's gotten to his spots in the mid-range, and he's looked really good at it, and he's running the pick and roll really well. Sometimes he throws it over the top to Bruno, and it doesn't connect. They'll get that chemistry, but he has looked really good with some no-look passes in the pocket through the seams. He's been hitting shooters in the corners. I'm impressed. I want to see it continue. I want to see what he looks like in the regular season when he actually plays 32 minutes a night, and if he can keep that up. If he can, look out. Jalen Green just looks more mature. It looks a year older. It looks more confident, looks more fluid, looks stronger. Ball don't stop. There you go, right? But I mean, he's just put it all together. He's a scoring machine. And he's getting to the line. You said this. He's getting to the line more, which is important because that's the difference between him averaging 17, 18 points and him averaging like 23 or 24 points, right? If he's getting to the line like that, he could really, really light it up.
And you were talking, and you mentioned, right, talking about KPJ looking better in the pick and roll. Jalen looks more comfortable in the pick and roll. Like his ability to navigate the pick and roll, both. He's had a couple times where he's like missed the connection with Bruno, like over the top. Like he needs to get a little bit more accurate with throwing that lob pass over the top of the defense. But
he like flipped it and Bruno got it.
Yeah, like I mean, Bruno barely got it, but he got it. You know, still 2 points is 2 points, but. He's kind of had that. We started calling it, right, the little shovel pass or like the dump off pass, whatever, where he sucks in the defense and he's like right there at the cup, and he's connected with Sengun a couple times, right, where he like scoops it off to the side and he leads the defense with his eyes and everything. Like it's almost like a look away where he's just completely faking out the defense to where the big cutting over from the dunker spot gets a wide open dunker layup. And so that has been a nice little development in his game too, where he looks comfortable, kind of his timing, how he's reading defenses, especially coming out of the pick and roll and being able to get to those spots in the paint without just, I'm just going to go 110 miles an hour and drive in and, smoke the layup at the rim. It's all right. No, I'm going to attack. I'm going to pull it back a little bit. Okay. I'm going in, change the pace.
He's done that where he's gone Benny the Jet to the rack and smoked it. But then he's
had a couple of those. Yes.
But then he's adjusted and he uses, there's a couple times in one of the most recent games where he used his shoulder. I remember specifically twice, hit the dip and then finished. He finished once, and then the other time he hit the dip and got fouled and went to the line and got 2 free throws. So it's like you see the maturation. You see him finally understanding, like, hey, I can score and no one can stop me from back here. I can step back and shoot. I can drive and finish. I can get to my mid-range spot. I can drive and dump it off or flip it off or whatever.
Take it right at Miles Turner and then give him the too small treatment. That was
some Jordan athlete. I mean, even if it wasn't Jordan, it was like John Morant-esque. So that was incredible. So yeah, I love it, man. He looks like he's growing. Looks like, we're watching them grow before our eyes. KJ Martin, we talked about. Jabari Smith looks NBA ready. The shot looks real and ready. The impact on both ends of the floor is readily apparent. He moves, he's cutting, he's active. He's just the kind of teammate that you can tell raises the floor. You can tell he already raises the floor. Eric Gordon, I thought.
Plus, I'm so sorry. Plus, Jabari's just such a likable kid. He's so funny. Like he comes in, first media availability he does right after the or first time we got the chance to talk to him after he was sidelined because of the injury. Comes out and Fagan's like, so what have you learned? Being out due to injury, and he goes, what did I learn being out due to injury? Don't get injured. Like it was just so he's funny. He's got like a charming personality, right? Very charismatic, and that goes a long way when building rapport, building that chemistry with your teammates.
Yeah, and look, it goes a long way to, like, if all your swagger and attitude is coming from your guards, that's one thing. But when you have that vocality, like a vocal guy, vocality, is that a word? That might not be. You can get me there. But a vocal guy.
Man, I think you're on some Jackson Gatlin BS. I don't know if vocality is a word.
I threw that one in there. But a guy who is audible, but a guy that's like loud, but he's your big, right? It's like, he's not Kevin Garnett, or I don't think he is. And so I'm not making that comparison one-to-one directly, but like that's the best comparison I can think of just in terms of a loud, strong attitude, big at your back line, having your back. Like, the big dog's back there barking, right? It just gives a different vibe and feel to the team, a different bite to the team. Now your guards can get in someone's face and they know, like, I know it's like a stereotypical, NBA adage and it's from the 90s and some people think it's stupid. And when Charles Barkley says it, it's like, oh man, old man, you're living in the past. But when you're on the court competing, yeah, having that big guy behind you that's ready to have your back on the court, not even if you fight or whatever, but you just know the big dog's got my back and he's in there talking and he's anchoring the defense. And when you're on offense, he's talking like, and when you make a big play, he's there barking. We've seen him on the sidelines getting up and cheering. And like, I think he looked at someone and taunted them from the sideline. Like he's got an attitude and a swagger. And when that's coming from your 6'11", number 3 draft pick, that matters. So I'm super excited about watching him grow. Eric Gordon, shot looked good. He looks like the same old Eric Gordon, and the shot's on. There's really not much else to say.
He really looked like the same old Eric Gordon when he got to his dribble one package, went through the legs like 10 times, drove it through the top of the paint, circled it back out to 3, and then drained a 3. Nobody else touched the ball that possession. I had that moment. We were watching that game in Rockets Watch, and all of us collectively groaned, and we were just like, we never want. We need to dead that behavior immediately. We don't need to see that version of EG anymore. Bring me the version of EG EG we got against the San Antonio Spurs. That version of him spotting up and just playing more so in his lane in a very specific role offensively is the version of veteran EG that I want to see on the floor if he's going to be in the starting lineup.
I agree with you. So look, with that said, unless there's more that you want to get to, do you want to do some predictions for the season?
I'm not honestly a huge fan of like predictions, so to speak.
I think predictions are stupid, but I mean,
yeah, like what are we gonna do? Look, I'll be.
I think
I don't know, like KPJ most improved, maybe. Like, is that like a prediction?
No,
like,
I think the value in predictions is just looking back and and comparing the reality of whatever happens to like where your head was at that time. I would say let's do stats predictions for Jabari, Jalen, and KPJ, and then let's predict win-loss.
All right. Sounds good. Who do you want to start with? And are we doing like all their stats, or are we just going to do like, we'll do points for Jalen, like maybe something else for KPJ? Like, how do you want to do this? We did not set this up before we hit record. We're so bad at this.
We're going off the top. Dude, it's live content. Let's get it, baby. Well, basically. Jabari will do points, rebounds. KPJ will do points and assists. Jalen will just do points.
For Jalen, let's start with Jalen. I guess we'll start with the top, the cream of the crop, if you will. No. Doing my best Mastodon impersonation. No, let's go. I'm going to go 22 a game for Jalen.
Okay. 22 a game. I'm going to say 20.3.
20.3. Okay. All right. Maybe I'm buying too much stock after the preseason, that he had, but it's just, I don't know how he doesn't maybe even start getting closer to like 23, 24 this season. I know that's a crazy like year 2 jump to make, but he just makes it look so effortless offensively. Well, and I know it's not going to be the case every game, but
he's going to have off nights. He's going to have nights where, maybe he's out of the game early because it's a blowout, they're losing, or maybe he's out of the game early, or maybe not even out of the game, but he's just not dropping that many points because they're blowing someone out earlier. So, those kind of games, right? Where it's
the free throw shooting for me though. Like if he's able to get to the line, like anywhere 6 to 10 times a night, like that, in addition to what else he can actually like achieve on the floor, I think like 20 plus is a lock for sure. And then like, that's why I'm settling on 22. I'm trying to be a little bit more conservative with it when I want to be like 24, 25, like super gung ho with it. I'll go 22.
No. Okay. Yeah. 20.3. Jabari.
All right. Jabari, tee us off.
I'll do Jabari. I'm going to say 13.6 points per game and 8.1 rebounds.
13 and 8, 13 and a half and 8. Okay. I really also want to, I could be a total dick and be like 13.5 points per game. No,
but we're not playing prices right.
I know, right? No, I think somewhere in that range is like really close. I'll just say like an easier, I'm not going to do the decimals here. I'll do 14 and 8. Like pretty much your prediction. I see that. I like that. Let me add an additional category here. 3s per game for Jabari.
Made or
3, no, made.
I'll say 2.4.
All right. I like that. I'll say like 2.8. Like I was thinking like close to 3 threes a game. I just think he's going to get so many attempts from there, playing off of Jalen, KPJ, all that. It's going to be fun to like revisit this and be like, we're just completely off base or like right on the money.
There you go. That's why you do predictions. Cause it's fun.
All right. He talked me into it.
So Kevin, points and assists. Scooter.
18 and 7.
That's what I was going to say.
There we go. Finally got one. No. I don't know. Like, I'm not expecting him to like eclipse 20 a night. And I don't think he needs to, right? Like for him to be the version of what we want him to be for this team, he doesn't need to be like 20 plus score, let Jalen handle that, right? And then he can be the guy that's facilitating, right? He can turn it on some nights, but 18 and 7 feels like some good benchmarks for him.
Yeah. I mean, just like Jalen, there's going to be those nights where they go crazy. There's going to be those nights where they're off and it's quiet. There's going to be those in-betweeners, So it's just hard. Like putting up 20 a night means
stay hard, baby.
Stay hard. Putting up 20 a night is pretty serious. It means you are consistently obviously scoring in the 20s. So like when you get to 22, 24, it's like you gotta imagine that the floor for them is like a bad game is like 16, Is a bad game for Jalen 16 right now? Only if he's getting the shot attempts, which he's
going to. That's the other part. We'll see though,
because we saw the preseason. without Jabari and half of it without Sengun and 75% of it also without, like I said, Jabari, but also without Eric Gordon. So like just by virtue of there's a lot of shots to go around, you know, you need a lot of shots to drop 22 a night. Is he going to get enough of those? I don't know. He might not get enough to drop 20. I mean, he wouldn't have averaged 17 if he didn't get 21 shots a night to close the last 7 games of the season, you know? So, which in some ways balances out because there were nights where he didn't get enough attempts, you know, but we'll see. Okay. So wins and losses. And then
I said 18-7. You never gave an official prediction unless you're also saying 18-7.
That's what I mean. Literally.
All right, cool. All right, cool.
15-6. So I think it's 15.6 or something in 6. So I think roughly a couple points, maybe slightly over a couple points, and then one more assist. I think that's reasonable.
All right. So if we're doing wins and losses, I suck at math, so I'm going to ignore the losses column. I'm just going to say the wins. I'm going to say 28 wins.
I'm going to say 25.
Okay. All right. It's a little bit of space between our answers. I like it.
Yeah, 25 and 57. So you're saying 28 and 54.
I'll trust you on that.
Yeah.
I don't like carrying the one or doing any of that stuff. It sucks. Yeah, so 28 wins here, 25 wins for the Mastodon. All right, we got our predictions in, and we can laugh at ourselves months down the line when we come back and we're like, wow, these takes were just so terrible.
Drop your predictions in those comments.
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing. Go comment on the YouTube show. Tell us, you know, are you happy that we're doing State of the Rockets again? Let us know if you're excited to see us back. We're happy to bring this back to you again. We're getting through the off season. There were a couple points where, like, you know, we thought maybe we'll fire it back up, but we didn't want to just fire it up just for the sake of doing it. We wanted it to be relevant, good content, and hopefully that's what we brought for you here today. Some good discussion about the Rockets, about Kevin Porter Jr., about the center situation between Alperen Sengun and Bruno Fernando, preseason thoughts, and just, you know, the hopes heading into the season, and the fact that, again, the culture feels different, the vibes feel a lot different than they did last year surrounding this team. There's a lot of hope and optimism for what these young guys can really be together. So yeah, hopefully you're enjoying it. We're going to have this show back to you. We don't know the frequency quite just yet. We're going to figure it out. Roosh is a busy man. I'm a busy man, but we love doing this show together. We love bringing you the premier Houston Rockets podcast on the market. Any last words, Mastodon?
Yeah, we do Rockets Watch all the damn time, every day. You'll either get myself, Jackson, Clutch fans, or some combination thereof. So if you want daily Rockets content, hit us up on Twitter, find out how to get to playback, or just follow Rockets Watch on Twitter. Jackson, maybe put it in the...
Yeah, it'll be. I'll have links to everything in the comments. So there will be a link to the Rockets Watch Twitter account. There will also be a direct link to the Rockets Watch room. So if you're not a Twitter person, if you've never had a Twitter or whatever, just click that second link and it'll take you directly to the room. You can sign up. It's totally free. You don't have to pay a dime. All you need to do if you want to watch Rockets games with us is you need to be able to verify somehow that you have a cable provider, either a cable provider or a streaming service, whatever.
Xfinity, AT&T, League Pass, whatever it is.
However you watch the games legally, you can watch the games with us in Rockets Watch and interact with hundreds of other Rockets fans, and it is a ton of fun.
And we do pre-games and halftimes and a little bit of post-game too, so it's just all-inclusive, no wristband needed. Till the next time.
Till the next time, you can follow the Mastodon on Twitter at Roosh Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at JT Gatlin. We sincerely appreciate you for rocking with us, checking out the show. Again, we're going to be back on a more consistent basis doing the show because, again, Roosh and I love being able to talk hoop together. Until then, follow us on all the socials, all that good stuff. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Leave a comment. It helps us out a ton, and that's going to do it for us.
Peace. A double.